Yo, what up, guys? It's Renan, and I just wanted to give my last impressions of Overwatch 2 coming from the perspective of a competitive FPS player and an aim trainer player. This game has some of the most difficult aiming in an FPS game, just going by how dynamic characters play and the character model size. You have Mercy flying around in her ultimate with a tiny ass model, you have Genji's flying and slashing around you, and Tracer zip zapping across the map as well. These actually make aiming quite difficult to compare to other FPS, where it feels like some characters have smaller models than Valorant characters, while also having more movement than what you would see in a game like freaking Apex, which is known for its movement. And while that's true, this game has so much BS in it that makes it very annoying for someone wanting a competitive FPS. And it's no surprise, aiming can be very difficult, so there are many characters that take very minimal mechanical skill to make use of in order for people to casually play the game while still being valuable to the team. Characters like Mei, Reaper, Junkrat, Pharah, and many tank and support characters fit the bill for this exactly. However, if you're somebody looking for your aim to do a lot of the heavy lifting, it can, but it's going to be extremely hard to enjoy getting one shot by mini bosses. I kind of mean tanks, but that's another story for sure. That's also the annoying part about this game, just getting one shot by abilities left and right. And if you've ever played Valorant, it's like dying to the Raze utility, like the Raze grenade, except every character practically has this type of deadly utility that is even stronger than what you would see in Raze in Valorant. And in this way, Overwatch 2 is one of the most frustrating FPS games I've played, as it is crazy how many times you die to getting one shot by people who don't have very good mechanical skill. And it's one thing to get flick headshot by a Widowmaker, which is respectable in my opinion, but dying to a Junkrat that flanks and insta kills you because the audio on footsteps is super quiet can be really, really infuriating. And playing DPS is extremely difficult compared to most games, primarily because you're not just having to aim well, but you're also trying to avoid getting one shot. And all that being said, if we can actively not tilt from dying in this game, which can happen from minimal enemy skill, then I think you could enjoy this game. However, for me, I have a hard time dealing with this type of gameplay, but it doesn't really mean I'm going to quit. I just have to get used to being very team reliant and having many abilities that will one shot me and trying to play around them. But kind of for my closing thoughts, I really hope that if I were to say that I want the game balanced around what I want in an FPS game, this is my idea of how they should make Overwatch 2 better, which I'm sure is going to infuriate many, many Overwatch 1 players. But this is my take on it coming from other FPS like Valorant and Apex and things like that. So what I would like to see are tanks, one, not doing as much damage as they do. Like I said earlier, they are practically like mini bosses. They have crowd control, they're tanky, and they deal a shitload of damage. Things like Roadhog will literally one-shot you. Reinhardt will kill you if you're anywhere near him. Diva can fly at you and kill you no matter what you do unless you have your team supporting you, which is all well and good. But in my head, I feel like tanks should have very little damage, probably comparable to supports where they do have damage, but it's not like their main part of their kit. The main part of their kit, in my opinion, should be crowd control and tankiness, which allows their team to capitalize on them making a good play, using good crowd control, for example, but doesn't mean that they can just completely wipe a team by themselves if they get a pick on, say, the enemy tank. And that is kind of the main problem. I've already climbed the highest on my tank role, primarily playing Zarya, and while she was strong, the main thing that made her so OP in a player who has good aim is that if anybody stepped out of position, I can punish it extremely easily. The enemy team can't even damage me because of my bubbles, and I can just burn them down with my left click and good tracking, which I don't think is quite fair because if a soldier, for example, catches out somebody on the enemy team that's out of position, they can actually react and get away from him and may not die because one, his DPS isn't crazy compared to like a fully charged Zarya, and he isn't very tanky, so you can kill him if he tries to push you. Whereas you don't really have that luxury with tanks. So in my opinion, I think tanks should be tanky and have crowd control and damage that's similar to a support where they can kill somebody, but it's not their primary function. And then you have DPS characters, which I should be the most mechanically intensive type of role in the game where aim and mechanical skill are going to be super important, kind of akin to Sojourn, Cassidy, Soldier, things like that, where it does take a lot of mechanical skill, but they can pop off. And those should be the main people on your team capitalizing on your tank, crowd controlling people. And that's kind of my idea of how the game should be. And also, supports are actually in a pretty good spot. They can do damage and they can support their team via healing or also killing the enemy team. Like I popped off with Anna, where the Fair jumps up in the air and is killing people, and I just take him out by myself. That is perfect in my opinion. I think supports are in a really good place in the meta where they're not overbearing in terms of damage, but they fit their role perfectly. They are a support and they do that extremely well. And DPS characters, I feel like in a lot of ways, are in a good spot too. The main issue are mainly the tanks. So I think if they changed that around and they changed characters like Junkrat and Farah, who I think get a lot of value, and you have to specifically play around them and counter them to have fun in the game, I think they could use a rework. I think they should be a bit more skillful. Because if there's a Far Mercy, if you don't know what that is where a Farah and a Mercy group up together and just terrorize your team. And it takes a lot of coordination to kill them. And the only way to play around them effectively in a solo queue environment is to basically ignore them and try to fight the enemy team without them and try to use cover. But that doesn't happen in solo queue because your teammates are going to constantly die to the Farah and the Mercy. So it can be really, really annoying if the Farah knows what he's doing, playing around cover with the Mercy pocketing him. And that is infuriating gameplay, in my opinion. I think things like that and also one-shots should be reduced heavily. I know that Blizzard took out crowd control in this game. Things like Cassidy stun they took out of the game because of that's not really the direction they wanted to go. But I think they really need to take out one-shots, right? Because if you don't know, the best type of crowd control is killing somebody. But many characters have that type of one-shot potential, aka have the best type of CC in the game. And I think if they want to make the game more fun, they should take out a lot of the one-shots and redesign character kits, not to be insta-killing people, but to have more dynamic and elongated fights. That way there's time to react, and the game's going to be a bit more fluid than, oh, look, I just got friggin' flanked by a Junkrat instantly dying, and more of like a poke. You know, if I'm playing, for example, Sojourn, and if they took out the one-shot potential of a right-click, which in my opinion is the only reason that makes her OP, but if they were to redesign her kit to be more of like a poke character, doing consistent damage with the occasional right-click to poke the enemy team, then that would be pretty interesting. And then you have an Ashe in the backline shooting. You have Genji's trying to flank and poke people down. Cassidy's trying to duel people and poking the tank down. Stuff like that would be a lot of fun. But as we have it right now, it's basically the tanks are so overpowered and overtuned in terms of damage that it's like which tank is going to wipe your team or which tank is going to outplay the other and then wipe your team after your tank is dead. And that, in my opinion, is not very fun gameplay. And I know if you're a tank main, you're probably going to be upset, like, oh my gosh, there's only one tank now. Well, yeah, but you're a mini boss now. When I played Zarya, I literally would kill everybody on the enemy team on my solo queue grind with like a 70% win rate, and I barely started playing tank. All I had was good aim, and I watched one guide video on how to play Zarya, and then I had a 70+% win rate, which is all well and good, but I think is kind of unfair that I'm just barely know what I'm doing in Overwatch 2 and I'm killing everybody because I'm a tank. That isn't good game design in my opinion. I think mechanical skill should be the sole factor in how you should kill people, and there could be less mechanically intensive characters, but they should provide utility not in killing people, but in terms of supporting their team. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Overwatch and what I think they should do with the game, but I don't think they're going to do that. I think tanks are going to be consistently extremely powerful. I think that you're going to keep getting one shot, and this game is going to continue being frustrating, but I'll have to live with it. But those are my opinions on what I think the game should be from the perspective of a competitive FPS player and somebody who practices their aim a lot. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'm out.